Well, Mr. Ikeji, I'm going to ask you to rewind, and it's for a reason, because we do know that it was seen that when INEC started this new idea of bringing in card reader, the fact that you will only be able to vote if you own a PVC, we saw the debates that preceded that, and how INEC held its ground that no, we must use this card reader, and we also saw what eventually happened on the presidential election day, which was the first time they were going to be tried out. Where do you think in this process that INEC became compromised in Imo State, since you're talking about Imo State?
I'm not saying INEC as a body was compromised.
Beg your pardon. Let me rephrase that.
Yes, please.
Where do you think that the process became compromised? At what point do politicians lose faith? And at what point do you think that electoral officers found out that they could compromise this process without being found out? At what point did the electorators give up on having a credible process?
I wouldn't say the electorates gave up, and I wouldn't say that the electoral officers themselves were 100% compromised. But those that matter, I can tell you clearly that they were compromised. All of the politicians.
Is that from day one? Is it that they
no? Let me attack the issue of the card reader.
Yes.
You see, I went through this card reader at us with all sorts of confidence. Eventually, during the days of the elections, we found out that this card readers failed. Completely opposite of the impression INEC gave to us.
That's the presidential election.
Even the governorship elections. Even during the governorship elections, the candidates were not used effectively.
You have to be careful so that you do not impose your experience as the experience of others. In many areas...
Well, I can tell you that I had a statewide coalition report.
That's what I'm saying.
And so I can talk about Imo State.
The experience of Imo State is definitely not the experience of Ogun State or the experience
will be subjective.
Of Lagos State.
Those will always be subjective.
Where were the places you monitored or you observed?
I monitored the entire Imo State. The entire Imo State. I was in a situation room and monitored everywhere. I was in Wangele local government. I drove to Wangele. I had my stickers. I had my passage stickers. I drove to Wangele. I was in Owerri North. I was in Owerri Municipal. I was in Owerri. I was in a lot of places.
So at what point did the politicians find out that they could compromise INEC officials?
No, let me tell you, it's not on the day of the election. Sometimes these cards have been bought by the politicians. Some of these PVCs have been bought in their numbers by the politicians, and on the day of election they share it to people to come vote.
One of the real owners of the card.
The real owners of the card.
But are eligible to vote.
But are eligible to vote.
And do not have cards of their own? Those people do not have cards of their own?
That's what I'm saying, that there are situations where one person voted close to 3-4 times.
Using a separate card?
Either separate card or even the same card. All they needed to do is get the electoral officers to be compromised. And everybody in the hall knows what is going on.
But in that sense,
sharing money, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 to each per person
at the venue
and
there was no security officials.
The security officers looked the other way. That is what I'm saying. Sections 129 to 131 of the Electoral Act were observed more in disobedience than in obedience.
Because when some of these complaints came up in different parts of the country at the time when we consistently approached INEC, have you heard any of these kind of complaints coming through? They said they had dispatched certain people, and what they saw was that many of those allegations that in some cases elections
let me tell you something. When INEC goes for investigations, they will only use their own processes, their internal administrative processes.
Isn't that right?
It's right. That's how to get it. The internal administrative processes will not give them bad reports as to indict themselves, because if you give bad reports, then you are indicting yourself. There will be further need to further investigate why those things happen, and you may be compromised. So INEC officials will always give their bosses good reports as to what happened.
But you know that I think Mike was also in Imo State during that supplementary election.
At the top level, INEC would mean well.
Because I think they sent three resident electoral commissioners.
Yes.
So when they had those supplementary elections, are you also suggesting that perhaps all of those that they sent in didn't see what went on?
You see, if you remember, Mike Ikeji instigated a process of arresting a female somewhere in Imo State, where the woman was operating in a particular house, and it was linked to a particular senator. That shows you the extent to which a person of such high rank can go in solving problems when he is there on the field. So he's not always there on the field. They are not always there on the field.
In your estimation, who do you think is to be held responsible for, what you observed were lapses? Is it the politicians?
No, I think it's systemic, and that is why we are calling for an implementation of some of the recommendations of the Waste Committee. For example, we need to go into electronic voting. Yes, there are ups and downs of electronic voting, but we need to start right away preparing for electronic voting. We need to remove the incentives for political and elective positions. We need to make it less attractive. You don't become a billionaire overnight when you get elected or when you get appointed into public office, so that there will be no need for you to want to rig the election or want to compromise the electoral process. You won't find any need to do that. When those institutional approaches are put in place, and coupled with the fact of putting in place an electoral offences commission, where there will be a strong enforcement unit and an electoral offences tribunal. So when these institutions are put in place, we will find a way, we will see that we are moving forward. And again, when corruption is tackled at the root. So yes, so I think that yes, so I think that
do they have the personnel? If you set up all those bodies, all those groups, what about the personnel to handle them? Because you're pulling judges from traditional functions.
No, you see, just like we are asking for a constitutional court, like what is happening between the National Assembly and the presidency, we are asking for a constitutional court that should be treating some of these constitutional and political matters. When such opportunities are created, there will be enough hands. There are a lot of lawyers out there who are practicing full-time practice, who can be brought into the system, given training, given good training, and they become members of the tribunal. For example, the tax appeal tribunals are made up mainly of lawyers. So I don't think personnel is a challenge.
Let's look at continuing with the system now, yes. The judiciary.
Yes.
I mean, that's a very key, crucial part of sustaining and having a proper functioning democracy.
Yes.
Many cases get in there, and before they're even mentioned, it takes a very long time.
I agree with you. I think it's also a systemic problem. There are a lot of laxity within the judiciary that needs to be corrected. Now, if you put an appeal at the Supreme Court, sometimes it takes up to 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years before the appeal is listed, before your case is listed at the Supreme Court. What does that show? It shows that there are a lot of cases on the cost list, and the fact that there's more attention given to political and constitutional matters means that political matters take priority. And if they take priority, it means that these other ones are put by the sidelines, and there's a problem. So if ordinarily, without political and constitutional matters, ordinarily we are having slow traffic in the judiciary, what more where there's this kind of political dispensation, where there be a lot of political and constitutional issues?
Because in pressure,
so there's need to carry out a surgical operation in the Nigerian judiciary for a quick dispensation.